Our goal is not just an environment of clean air and water and scenic beauty while forgetting about the worst environments in America. Our goal is an environment of decency, quality, and mutual respect for all human beings and all other living creatures. Our goal is a decent environment in its broadest and deepest sense. And it will require a long, sustained political, moral, ethical, and financial commitment far beyond any commitment ever made by any society in the history of man.
My name is Tia Nelson. I am the daughter of Gaylord Nelson, the founder of Earth Day. My father was an extraordinary dad. He was an extraordinary leader. Growing up as his daughter, it was mostly a great privilege, but also I felt a heavy sense of duty to public service and to making a difference with my life. I work for the Outrider Foundation. Our goal is to educate people about big global challenges like climate change. One of my favorite quotes from my father was delivered on the eve of the first Earth Day in 1970. He said, "Ecology is a big science,
not a narrow one. It's a big concept, and it is concerned with all the ramifications of all the relationships of all living creatures to each other and their environment."
So when he talked about the environment, he talked about ecology and environment in the broadest sense, in the most inclusive sense. That idea resonated with students across the country. Collectively, they made a difference that was unforeseeable.
This movement and this fight is about all of us, because what is more fundamental than the air that we breathe, than water, than the soil that we stand on, than the land that we love? Like, what is more fundamental to every single one of us than that? My name is Varshini Prakash. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I am one of the co-founders of Sunrise Movement. We are building a movement of young people all across this nation to stop the climate crisis and create millions of good jobs for our generation in the process. And when I began looking back into what the first Earth Day was like, what it meant, the level of people who got involved, the kind of political action, I think for me, Earth Day now is about getting back to our roots.
My father was brilliant at working across the aisle to build consensus. He knew when to compromise. He knew when to stick to his principles. Think of all of the important environmental laws that were passed after that first Earth Day, and they were passed with significant support from both parties.
For 6 years, I said that climate change was nonsense, in as much as I represented Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, probably one of the reddest districts in the reddest state of the nation. That was the end of the inquiry for me. So I admit that's fairly ignorant, but that's the way it was for 6 years. So I'm Bob Inglis, and I run an outfit called republicen.org, where conservatives, convincing conservatives that they're really good on climate and that they've got the answer. It's free enterprise innovation. My son, the eldest of our 5 kids, came to me. He was voting for the first time because he just turned 18. And he said to me, "Dad, I'll vote for you, but you're going to clean up your act on the environment." It's the first of a 3-step metamorphosis for me. Step 2 was going to Antarctica with the science committee, seeing the evidence in the ice core drillings. Step 3 was another science committee trip. It's there that at a stopover at the Great Barrier Reef, great blessing there was meeting an Australian climate scientist named Scott Heron, and just being inspired by his faith to act on climate change.
When Bob spoke about climate change while serving in the United States Congress, he was primaried and he lost his election. He was attacked for speaking the words climate change. This was a transformative moment in his life and led to him dedicating his whole career today to addressing the climate change challenge.
For young people growing up in this country, we have been defined by the climate crisis. People who have been born after the year 2000 have never lived a year on this planet that wasn't one of the hottest years on record. We are the climate generation. And so now, at a young age, we have realized that if our politicians aren't going to do something about this problem, then we have to take matters into our own hands.
Through leadership of people like Varshini, the youth movement has been energized in the last year in ways that resemble what was happening almost 50 years ago when the first Earth Day occurred.
There comes a place where activism drives even the crustiest old-timer to decide to get involved.
I don't think there's any other issue viewed in its broadest sense, which is as critical to mankind as the issue of the quality of the environment in which we live.
Environmentalism is not a partisan issue. Environmentalism is a quality of life issue for all of us.
You know, I'm very optimistic about the future. I think we're going to solve climate change. It's going to be that conservatives come together with progressives to figure out we're literally in this together.
This is about not just changing light bulbs, this is about changing our politics. And if anything, we will be successful because we do it together.
I want the youth of today to know that I have done everything that I can to ensure on the 100th anniversary of Earth Day, we are celebrating a brighter future. We're at a critical moment in history. We have an opportunity to address the greatest environmental challenge of our time.
Are we able? Yes. Are we willing? That's the unanswered question.
To moderate this session on Earth Day Magic, please welcome environmental journalist and founding director of the Initiative on Communication and Sustainability, Columbia University, Andrew Revkin.
It's great to be here to reflect on this film, this moment for the Earth and for this species that's become a dominant force on this planet in a week, in a month, in a year that's about as transformational and challenging as any period you can think of in human history. And we also have, as the film has shown, incredible potential, if we choose it, to forge bipartisan progress. We have Tia Nelson, Varshini Prakash, and Bob Inglis here to reflect on some of the themes in the film and on the more general question of considering this moment when a biological tsunami, similar to the earthquake-generated tsunami that affected Varshini's life a long time ago when she was 11 years old. It transformed her life and her ambitions, was a tectonic force, and now we have a biological force that's prompting us to all think about how do we get where we want to go from here. Tia, the first question is for you, and if you could reflect on the what you put into this film, what's your main goal? What do you want people to take away from this week, for this year, through their careers or through their initiatives in their communities going forward?
Oh, thanks, Andy. I spent time thinking about this occasion, the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, from a personal standpoint and a professional one. This is my life's work, but I want honor my father's legacy, but I didn't want it just to be a reflection on the past and history. I wanted to think and speak to the past, the present, and the future of the movement. I wanted people to understand that there was a great sense of power and individual action, that my father's call to action on the first Earth Day, which we can talk about a little bit more, perhaps. But his call to action was bipartisan. It was multi-generational. It had a significant social justice element that I think the environmental community really honestly failed to hear for quite a long time. But I mostly wanted young people today to know that they can make a difference, that they need to get involved, that if we unite in facing these big challenges, and of course, climate change is the biggest environmental challenge of all time, that we can solve it. And to me, Varshini and Bob were sort of perfect bookends to that story. They're of different generations, different political persuasions, but they're united in dedicating their lives, as am I, to addressing the climate change crisis. And to me, that gave an opportunity for the perfect representation of what my father was calling for that first Earth Day, while also looking towards the future.
That's a great message. I'd like to ask Varshini a question now. You represent among us here the person who will be around for Earth Day 100, God willing, forces of nature willing. We are looking at this as a legacy issue, and for you, this is really the world that can be made that you and your family or your compatriots will inhabit. So, thinking about all the what I loved about the Green New Deal and about the Sunrise Movement was you had a message, but you also incorporated complexity. It's a systems approach to solving the climate problem. It's not single dimension, which we see too often. The big challenge now, I think, will be how do you broaden the coalition so that, and we'll talk about this with Bob more in a minute too, but what's the main, is there something about what's happened with coronavirus which has illustrated to us how powerfully connected we all are, that might draw you forward in broadening the coalition and pushing this forward?
Right. Well, I think that the coronavirus crisis, like many crises, has just laid bare the existing inequalities that we have in our system, right? We're seeing the ways in which Black communities are being affected disproportionately than other communities. We are seeing the devastating impact on working families, the unemployment rates that are certainly affecting many different people, but particularly poor and working class individuals, and who is considered an essential worker and sort of is risking their lives to be out carrying out, the things we need to live our lives. And so I think there's actually a really big opportunity in this moment as we consider an impending recession, possible depression. We are going to need to think big in this moment. We are going to need to think on the level of how do we build millions of jobs and give people a shot at economic prosperity. How do we do that while tackling our long-term crises like the climate crisis? And I think this is a moment where we can actually bring in labor unions. We can be bringing in a more diverse coalition of people into this movement than ever before in the fight for a Green New Deal. So I think a lot has been lost, but I think there's a huge opportunity as well.
And there's a big if there, and the if is the terrain that Bob inhabited on Capitol Hill, at least in the United States. We face probably the most polarization, and it's a continuing wave of polarization, and a cultural adherence to tribe that shows how clearly facts and data often don't matter. So Bob, when you look at the landscape on Capitol Hill in DC, there are things that must happen in Washington. I would love to think that this is a distributed, there's many things, everyone in the community, all the 7.7 billion people in the world can do something right now by staying distant. But we do need leadership. We do need money to be spent in certain ways. We do need the data to be followed, or we're going to be in a big mess on this and climate change. So Bob, is there a path? You only have 2 minutes or so here to reflect on what do we do about Washington?
Well, perhaps the coronavirus will give us an awareness of how, as Varshini was just saying, people are risking their lives to care for us and stocking groceries and caring for us if we go to the hospital. and that they really do care for us. And if we can transfer that same awareness to climate scientists, in other words, that climate scientists really are caring for us. It's not as though they're some alien species that's disconnected from us. They actually do care for us, and they're trying to tell us of the challenge ahead and the potential solutions and how to avoid those problems that we could face. So I hope that this could become that moment where we realize, you know what, the climate scientists are actually on our side. They're for us. And what I think we all know is the heart decides and the head justifies. And so what we've had is a little bit of a heart problem where we haven't thought that they were for us. But maybe now we can come to realize that science really is a very helpful force, and something we should listen to. So that may cause us to get into the head and find that solutions are really available to us.
And bipartisanship is one of the most powerful features of the film. And that era, the 60s, that point when Nixon gave the most environmentally powerful State of the Union message of any president ever. And so many things unfolded there, as the film shows and others have learned this week. Tia, you have the last word. It's about a minute left. And if you have a sense of what you see as a path to post-partisan focus on actually solving problems, putting the problem first and party or cultural identity second, how does that work? What's your vision?
Well, it's why I'm so grateful to Varshini and Bob for joining me and helping tell this story, looking at the past and the present and towards the future. Each of them are so brave in their journey to address this crisis. And 1970 was a very politically divided time, and yet the first Green Generation was launched, more environmental laws were passed than any other time in American history, and a Republican president signed into law the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency to protect our rights, every American's rights, regardless of whether they were a Democrat or a Republican, every American's right to breathe clean air and drink clean water. And so I hope that through this film that we can inspire people to see that by getting involved, we can change the conversation and the narrative, work together towards the solutions, because we know what they are. And to me, the exciting thing is we're not sitting here debating the science. We're here ready to have a conversation about how to move forward and forge that brighter future by finding the solutions and creating the political will and social will and capital to get the job done, because it's urgent. And here we are, and all of us are ready to go to work.
Well, hopefully everyone watching is going to find their path as well. It's great to have had you together today, and maybe we can do this again each year and meet to go and convene and try to track progress, identify continuing problems, and then push forward. So it's wonderful to be part of this Earth Optimism Summit. And I hope, again, that those who are watching can share what they're seeing, can reach out to others and push forward.